morning. I'm Andy Fair with Bodies Outside of Unjust Laws, Coalition for Reproductive Freedom and LGBTQ Liberation. We have just finally, after an 8-month legal battle, finally won a permit from the city of Chicago for the right to march in our city. It shouldn't have come to this. It shouldn't have taken an 8-month legal battle with the kind assistance of the American Civil Liberties Union, National Lawyers Guild attorneys, a suit in federal court, and appeal to an administrative law judge. It should not have come to that. I do not think the framers had any idea that the First Amendment right to freely assemble and express your views should have taken that kind of nonsense. And I should send a special message here to our mayor and to the police superintendent. You can blather all you want about respecting constitutional rights, but the fact that you forced our coalition to go through this, and the fact that you are forcing any number of other organizations, which have still, just less than 2 weeks before the convention, still do not have permits, that is an outrage. That is an insult. And that says that your claims of standing up for democracy are pretty damn hollow, at least in this one respect. So we're very happy that we have won the permit, but we know that it should not have come to this. It should not have come to the fact that the framers wouldn't have ever thought that anyone would have had to go through this in order to win a permit. Now, a special message for the Chicago Police Department. You've been doing all sorts of fear-mongering about violence, about chaos. Let's remember, it was the CPD who led what was termed a police riot in 1968. It wasn't protesters. Our goal is to have a safe march where our issues of reproductive justice, of LGBTQ freedom, and an end to the genocide in Gaza are first and foremost, and not legal battles with the city or other authorities. That is our message. And the fact that you forced us to go through this 8-month battle to get here so we could stand on this corner and say that right here on Sunday, August 18th at 5 p.m., we will be legally marching, it shouldn't have come to that. But again, our issues are reproductive justice, LGBTQ freedom, national legislation ensuring both, and an end to the Gaza genocide. The fact that the city president is funding this genocide, is allowing mass starvation in Palestine, is an utter outrage. And many young people, and I don't count myself as a young person, but many young people today are extremely outraged by the fact that there is a genocide going on today, just as many young people were more than half a century ago in 1968. Finally, one last message to our mayor and our police superintendent. You say you are about ensuring constitutional rights. Well then, why the hell do you continue to tolerate Proud Boys members and Oath Keepers, both groups dedicated to being against LGBT freedom, against feminism, against racial equality? Why do you allow people like that within the ranks of the CPD? We demand that the CPD respect not only our rights, but the rights of every other protester who is going to be protesting the DNC, beginning with our march on Sunday, August 18th. We stand in solidarity with all other protesters, whether permitted or not, and we're going to continue our suit so as to help ensure those rights. And I'm very happy to say that after our other speakers say something, if you have questions about the legalities of what we have won in terms of this permit, very pleased to have Ed Yanka of the American Civil Liberties Union again. We would not be standing here saying that we've got this piece of paper here without the efforts of the ACLU, without the efforts of our pro bono attorneys also at the National Lawyers Guild, without many volunteers. So a big thank you to Ed, and we appreciate what the court has forced the city of Chicago to do so that we could have this piece of paper, and at least give our people some assurance that this will be a safe march, that they will not be targeted by the CPD. Now, there's no absolute guarantees of that, because we all know, I should say, should know the history of the CPD in terms of unconstitutional policing, but at least this piece of paper gives us some assurance that people can safely assemble here at 5 p.m. Sunday, August 18th, right here for a rally and then a march on Michigan Avenue. I'm going to now give it over to my fellow activist, Linda Lowe, and she can introduce herself.
Thank you. My name is Linda Lowe. That's L-I-N-D-A-L-O-E-W. I am one of the organizing committee of bodies outside of unjust laws, as well as Chicago for Abortion Rights. Chicago for Abortion Rights is one of nearly 40 organizations that are co-sponsoring the march that will begin right here on August 18th. An important takeaway today for you should be that we are marching and why we are marching. Because bombs continue to fall on the people of Gaza. Overwhelming numbers of those slaughtered are women and children. All hospitals, most schools have been demolished. An entire population of more than 2 million people is displaced. It will likely take more than a generation to rebuild. There can be no reproductive justice in Gaza or anywhere without the liberation of Palestine. And we must have an arms embargo on U.S. weapons to Israel in order to achieve an immediate and permanent ceasefire. Rhetoric and promises from politicians are not enough when bombs continue to fall. We are also here today because the same government funding the genocidal slaughter in Gaza is responsible for millions of women and all pregnant people in this country facing draconian conditions for their reproductive care. In states with 6-week bans, people are traveling to states like Illinois in record numbers. In July of this year, the Chicago Abortion Fund fielded the most support requests in their history. Over 80% more requests to come to Illinois for care than last July. We need and demand national legislation that assures abortion access in every state and full and available reproductive care at no or low cost, regardless of your income or zip code. We demand repeal of the Hyde Amendment, in effect since 1976, through several Democratic Party administrations. That amendment prohibits the federal funds be used for abortions. Poor, uninsured, and people of color bear the greatest impact of that being approved and reapproved by every Congress since it's gone into effect. We demand unrestricted access to abortion pills through the mail. We must close the door on right-wing funded attacks on abortion medication, via telehealth or any method. We must defend IVF, that millions of Americans utilize. We demand legal protection in emergency rooms that deliver full services, including abortions, not only when a pregnant person is on the brink of death or serious medical complications. We must not return to the dark ages, basically. We march to assert full bodily autonomy and no criminalization of providers, patients, or families. Overwhelming numbers of Americans are with us. Every referendum for abortion rights has passed, and we expect more victories this November. We also demand, full funding for schools, housing, and to stem environmental catastrophes, and to address the vast inequality of communities of color, the shameful maternal and infant mortality and morbidity rates in the United States, highest among so-called advanced nations in the world. In short, we need a massive infusion of funds for reproductive care, for trans health care, and an end to all discrimination against queer and trans people, and not another dollar for bombs. Everything we've won in this country, from civil rights to withdrawal of American troops from unpopular wars, to the fight of unions for collective bargaining, to the constitutional right to abortion, has been through mobilizing in the streets, workplaces, and communities of this nation, not by simply relying on politicians or parties, no matter their rhetoric or promises. It has been by mobilizing our collective power that we win. And that's why we'll be marching, beginning right here in this intersection on August 18th, Sunday, August 18th, 5 p.m. Please join us. Thank you.
My name is Christy Korkunian, K-R-I-S-T-I-K-E-O-R-K-U-N-I-A-N, and I am the co-founder of Stop Transgenocide Chicago. We are standing at the precipice of a Democratic Party that could take their constituency seriously. They could become a new, less harmful ruling structure that takes into account the current very real needs of queer and trans folks, black and brown people, Palestinians, those who are seeking bodily autonomy and solid reproductive justice. We don't just need a tone change from them, we need action. This rebranded Democratic Party cannot re-bend to the will of the people unless they know what we need, unless they hear us loud and clear. The city has kept us waiting to know our place within this convention since January, and now here we are less than 2 weeks out from the actual event, and the ink is just now dry. They passed this needlessly vague, overreaching, restrictive footprint ordinance within the most liberal administration the city of Chicago has known, allegedly. They held our free speech hostage, time, place, manner, and conditions, and that will continue. And since the city of Chicago loves nothing more than wasting time and money, I leave you with this. As the Air and Water Show races on this weekend, I hope every single one of you takes a moment to reflect the fact that these were the last sounds over 15,000 gods and children heard before they took their final breath. Enjoy, Chicago.
Give us the route, Andy. Remind us of the route.
Yeah.
We're going to start here.
We're starting here for an opening rally, a short opening rally, and then we're going to be marching south on Michigan Avenue, ending at the General Logan statue. John Logan, famous Civil War general, also famous scene of the 1968 convention where the police rioted against protesters.
Can you reflect a little bit on the irony of...
I'm hard of hearing, which makes it even worse.
Can you reflect a little bit on the irony of progressive values protesting a democratic potential new government?
I'm glad that you brought that up, because frankly, as Christy was saying, we get a lot of rhetoric out of our Democratic politicians, and many people have asked me several times, well, why are you protesting for LGBTQ rights? Why are you protesting for reproductive justice? At least those two demands the Democrats are supposedly on board for. And what we've seen over and over again is that while they'll give us rhetoric, they won't put any political capital behind winning those rights. I'm a veteran of the fight for equal marriage rights in this state. And I will tell you, our biggest opponent in terms of winning that legal right, when the Democrats had super majorities in both houses and had the governor's mansion, our number one opponent was now indicted Mike Madigan, Speaker of the House for the Democrats. That was our primary opponent. He was more interested in giving big favors to the tune of millions of dollars to his friends at ComEd than he was interested in equal marriage rights. That was a bitter lesson that many activists back then learned. And right now, I know there's a lot of talk about, oh, Kamala Harris, new tone, new tone. New tone is not going to feed the starving in Gaza. We have mass starvation in Gaza thanks to Israel blockading and Egypt blockading all entrances to the territory. If you go to sources such as Democracy Now!, you will see little children whose bones are absolutely, their bodies are absolutely emaciated thanks to the lack of food and water. And this is happening to 2 million people with our tax dollars. So a tone change does not effing cut it. Now, as I've told some out-of-town journalists, we in Chicago are very familiar with politicians who give us nice rhetoric and then do other things. Thank you, former Mayor Lori Lightfoot. And the fact that our current mayor has fought not only us, but every other single protest group for simply the right to march speaks volumes about where he's at. And he's got to decide, who is the superintendent of the police in Chicago? Is it Snelling or is it him? Because he's the one who made the campaign promises to get rid of these oath keepers, to get rid of these other neo-fascists in the police ranks. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of the problem with constitutional rights of policing in this town, which goes back decades to John Burge, to Ronaldo Guevara, Ronald Watts, and a host of other really evil people that they tolerated in their ranks for decades. So when our politicians in the Democratic Party give us nice rhetoric about respecting our constitutional rights and yet deny every single permit application, then we have to say, well, what's the reality here? And I would just ask each of you in the news media to keep putting that question to Mayor Johnson, to keep putting that question to Superintendent Snelling every time they say they're going to respect constitutional rights. Only thanks to the ACLU, the National Lawyers Guild, and a host of activists that we were able to stand here today and wave this piece of paper.
What's a message to the neighbors that live around the route of the protest? They might be, in some cases, afraid of their safety.
We will be far less dangerous than race cars going down the streets at 80, 90, or how many 100 miles an hour they do here. We are committed to a peaceful protest because we do not want our messages to be obscured, whether by police violence or by agent provocateurs. We have our issues, which are reproductive justice, which are LGBTQ freedom, which are ending the genocide in Gaza. And we want those first and foremost, and not some silly drama caused by law enforcement or agent provocateurs. We're all very committed to that. You have to speak up because I'm hard of hearing.
Can you talk about how many people you're expecting?
How many people you're expecting?
Thank you. You know, it's funny because any number of protesters, organizers will say, we're going to have X amount. They're just making it up. We won't know. It could be pouring rain out here on Sunday, August 18th. The fact of the matter is that anyone who tells you that there's going to be X amount of people at any of these protests is fooling themselves. That said, we were not only going to support our protest, but we have endorsed every other protest that we know of, at least, that is happening. And so we were going to support those protests and try and make them as big as possible. We'll use our Sunday night march here to promote them and encourage people to attend those protests as well. And one of those protests, I should mention, is probably not on your radar screen because it hasn't had the perfect fight that we have and the other groups have had. And that is the Wednesday, August 21st march starting at Union Park. at 4 o'clock. And I'd strongly encourage people to attend and cover that one, because that is organized by the largest Palestinian American activist group in the city. And they've been the real force behind our wonderful marches in this city. I sure as hell am going to be here, and I'm sure my friends here are as well. And Linda wanted to say something.
On the question on people along the route, who lives there, who plays there, who goes to cultural institutions, Michigan Avenue is one of the proudest, most iconic streets that we all enjoy in Chicago. We are pretty sure that the thousands of delegates, guests, and members of the international media will be along Michigan Avenue at some point in the day and days before the convention begins. We are the only march we know of, not only the first march, but the only one that will be going through the center of downtown along this iconic boulevard. So we say welcome to these delegates, and here are issues. Join us if you agree with them. Fight for action from the Democratic Party on the floor of that convention so that our voices are heard. That is the reason we're doing this, so that we can win our rights and address everybody who's coming to the convention to understand that, hear us, and be part of the fight. And thank you.
I have a question regarding the issues that you're advocating for. Can you talk about specific things that you're asking of the Democratic Party beyond just the stop the war, support LGBTQ plus rights? Can you talk about the specifics that you're asking of the party?
I'll take a little piece of that, and I'd encourage my friends who've already spoken about it also to speak about it. The Democrats have been introducing a pro forma bill every single year that supposedly is going to guarantee equal access to employment, equal access to public accommodations for LGBTQ people. And my experience is, as an organizer, trying to get people that are affiliated with the Democratic Party actually stand up in the streets to participate even in a damned press conference denouncing things like 303 Creative, the anti-equal access to public accommodations court case that came up earlier. They won't lift a finger. They were not interested in reproductive justice until they saw it was a vote getter. And so, excuse me if I'm a little bit cynical now that they're singing a different tune, now that we've lost the constitutional right to abortion. But equal access to public accommodations, equal access to employment, equal access to housing, and prevention of discrimination, all of those seems to me the bare baseline of what we need for LGBTQ freedom. There's many more things that go beyond legal equality, as Martin Luther King and others who then helped form the Black Power movement in the late 60s learned. Legal equality is just the first starting point. It's not LGBTQ freedom, it's just legal equality. And we have plenty of problems with this flurry of anti-trans bills that keep on littering our state houses. And I'm not seeing the Democrats being out front about denouncing that and campaigning seriously for national legislation that would make all that garbage a dead letter. But I'd like to turn it over to my colleague here. Things that they'd like to see.
Ever since Roe v. Wade was overturned in 2022, we have seen a bitter state-by-state battle to try to win back the right to legal abortion without any restrictions and viability conditions in every single state in the country. Now, some states like Illinois, it is legal. But in at least half the states of this country, there are bans or such serious restrictions that more people than ever before are flocking from those states, or in some cases can't afford to travel. We don't want to have to fight these battles state by state. People should have the basic human right to live in dignity, to get the basic health care which we believe abortion is a part of. So is contraception. So is IVF, which I'll point out that people in red states and blue states, Republicans and Democrats and people not voting for any party, have been utilizing and as part of their life in order to pursue having a family. If we had national legislation, which has come up time and again, but has not yet been passed, that not only brings us back to the level of legality that we had under Roe, but makes it accessible everywhere, which would mean repealing the Hyde Amendment, which it's just unthinkable that people of color and people without insurance and people with low incomes cannot utilize federally funded health care to be able to get abortions and full reproductive care. So that's another thing that could be put into place. There are also in every state, and not surprising, it shouldn't be, in Illinois, there are as many, if not more, what they call crisis pregnancy centers. These are really fake clinics. Many, if not most of them, are not even certified health centers. They exist to deliver disinformation, to encourage people seeking abortions to not get them, to carry babies to term whether they are in a position to care for them or not. There should be legislation everywhere regulating them so that they are not allowed to continue to do what they do. So there are a number of different things beyond what I just mentioned. They're listed, several different legislative pieces, and others that the legislatures and the executive could all come together on and demand get passed so that it's not possible for the court, right wing as it is right now, to be able to overrule that. Go to ourbodiesmarch.org and there will be a list of different legislative options that we are fighting for. But thank you for the question.
Just like one last thing, when we talk about reproductive justice, we're not just talking about abortion. Abortion is just one item in a long list. We live in a city where the overwhelming majority of children in CPS live in poverty. We're demanding, as part of reproductive justice, that people who want to raise kids be able to do so in a healthful manner. Now, whenever people like us demand things like this, and where's the money? I mean, the city of Chicago's broke, the state's got pension issues, blah, 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 blah. We live in the richest country in the world that managed to spend as much on its military as the next 10 biggest military spenders combined. Don't tell me there isn't the money to house everyone in this city, whether they're migrants, whether they're already pre-existing homeless folks in the city. Don't tell me that there is not enough money to have decent class sizes in CPS. Don't tell me that there isn't money for a much better CTA. We have the funds for this. Instead, both parties are committed to maintaining U.S. power in the world, as evidenced by their continuing support for the slaughter in Gaza. Any other questions? Thank you for coming. Oh, go ahead.
Can you say your full name again and then spell that out?
Yeah, Andy Thayer, last name spelled T as in Tom, H-A-Y-E-R. I am with both Bodies Outside of Unjust Laws, as well as the Gay Liberation Network, as well as Chicago for Abortion Rights. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.